Police say a Douglasville man shot and killed his wife last night outside of their home. Tonight, the community is coming together to support her family. Atlanta News First Niamani Watson is live for us in Douglasville. Niamani, the victim had plans to open up her own salon today.
Hey, yeah, it's for 4 days in Atlanta. 8-town, look, peace up, 8-town down. They don't know about that, only the real ATLers.
911, what's your emergency? There's a woman outside. She's been shot. Please hurry. The caller's voice trembled as the dispatcher tried to gather details. In the background, faint shouting could still be heard, words lost in the chaos of that night. Moments later, sirens pierced through the calm of Douglasville, Georgia. The lights of patrol cars painted the neighborhood red and blue, flashing against homes where families had already gone to bed. It was October 4th, 2025, a Saturday night that would end in heartbreak. Before we go deeper, if you're watching this on Shadow Crime, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon. But it helps us continue to shed light on real stories like this, stories that deserve to be heard. By the time officers arrived at 7082 Willowbrook Way, the scene was grim. A woman, later identified as 56-year-old Sabrina Willis Walker, lay on the ground, unresponsive. Standing nearby was her husband, 51-year-old Volanta Lejuan Walker, holding a gun. Officers shouted for him to drop it. Witnesses say he didn't listen. Instead, he reportedly pointed the weapon toward police. Within seconds, shots rang out again, this time from an officer's firearm. Volanta fell to the ground, wounded but alive. Neighbors came out in disbelief, watching as emergency crews rushed in. For them, this was a peaceful middle-class area. Quiet streets, family homes, laughter on weekends. The kind of place where tragedy felt distant. But that night, violence arrived right at their doorstep. Sabrina wasn't just anyone in Douglasville. She was known, loved, and admired. A successful entrepreneur. She owned Groomsmen of Atlanta Barbershop, a local business she had built with her own hands. Since 2009, she had been cutting hair, mentoring young barbers, and serving her community. Friends describe her as vibrant, someone with a radiant smile who always lifted people up. And that weekend was supposed to be a celebration. The next day would have been her birthday and the grand reopening of her newly renovated shop. But instead of laughter, her loved ones gathered in tears. Her family described her as the heart of everything. A daughter, mother, sister, and friend. Someone whose energy filled any room she walked into. But behind those smiles, it seemed her marriage to Volanta wasn't as peaceful as it appeared. The couple hadn't been married long. Less than a year, according to reports. Those close to Sabrina say that the relationship started off full of love and promises. Volanta appeared charming, even protective. But over time, his behavior allegedly shifted. There were hints of tension, disagreements that grew louder, moments where Sabrina confided in loved ones that she didn't feel as safe as before. No one thought it would come to this, that she would lose her life at the hands of the man she once called her soulmate. The argument that night began inside their home. Words turned into shouting. Sabrina tried to get away, but Volanta followed her outside, where neighbors later reported hearing several gunshots. It was over in moments. As paramedics confirmed her death, the community began to unravel, struggling to understand how such a tragedy could happen to someone who gave so much love.
Police say a Douglasville man shot and killed his wife last night outside of their home. Tonight, the community is coming together to support her family. Atlanta News First Niamani Watson is live for us in Douglasville. Niamani, the victim had plans to open up her own salon today.
Yes, Sydney, Sabrina Walker was the owner of the Groomsmen Atlanta Barbershop, and despite what happened, her daughters still decided to hold the grand opening today. You can take a look behind me and see that many people decided to come out and support the business. Now, one of Sabrina's daughters says she will be taking over for her mother. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says the shooting happened last night at Sabrina's home on Littlebrook Way shortly before 9:30. Police say Sabrina's husband, Volanta Walker, chased her outside the home after an argument and shot her. When police arrived, they found Sabrina dead on the ground in the front yard and her husband standing nearby with a gun. Police say the husband pointed the gun at officers and an officer shot him. He was taken to the hospital. Earlier, Atlanta News First spoke with a neighbor who says he came home to police surrounding the couple's house.
Kind of shocking again because, like I said, pretty quiet neighborhood. I never seen nothing like that. By me having my daughter, kind of scare her a little bit.
Sabrina's birthday is also today. Her daughters say she would have turned 57. The investigation is ongoing. Live in Douglasville, I'm Imani Watson, Atlanta News First.
People who knew them still can't wrap their heads around it. How could a marriage that looked so steady on the outside turn into something this tragic? And that's the scary thing about situations like this. We often see smiles on social media, pictures of couples going out, and happy posts online. But what happens behind closed doors can be a completely different story. Sabrina's daughters later shared that they had seen some red flags. Small things at first, arguments that escalated quickly, controlling behavior, and moments where Sabrina seemed withdrawn. Yet, like many people in similar situations, she kept hoping things would get better. She was a strong woman, a business owner, a mother. She probably thought she could fix it or that he'd change. Sadly, that change never came. The night of October 4th was supposed to be peaceful. It was the eve of her birthday weekend, and her daughters were preparing for the shop's reopening. But then, that argument started. It's not clear what sparked it, but neighbors later told investigators that they heard loud voices before the shots were fired. Sabrina ran outside, maybe trying to escape or call for help, and Volanta followed. Those few seconds became the turning point, moments where choices can be undone. Police say that when they arrived, the situation was still unfolding. Volanta was armed, and despite repeated commands to drop the gun, he didn't comply. Officers had no choice but to respond, firing and hitting him once. He was taken to the hospital, treated for his injuries, and later transferred to jail once released from care. Now, here's where things take a twist. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over both the homicide and the officer-involved shooting aspects of the case. That means two separate investigations, one focusing on the death of Sabrina Walker and the other on whether the officer's actions were justified. Evidence was collected. Shell casings were analyzed, and the sequence of events was pieced together through witness statements, body camera footage, and forensic testing. At this point, no official motive has been publicly confirmed, but based on what's been shared by family and friends, it appears to have been rooted in domestic violence, a tragic pattern that often ends exactly like this. People who knew Sabrina said she was trying to distance herself, that she was focusing on her work, her family, and her dreams. It's heartbreaking because it sounds like she was in the middle of rebuilding her life, ready to step into a new chapter, and then it was stolen from her. Her daughters have since become her voice, pushing for justice and awareness. They spoke publicly, saying they didn't just want their mother remembered as a victim, but as a fighter, a woman who gave back to her community. They've been vocal about the dangers of staying silent in abusive relationships. And honestly, that's an important reminder for anyone watching this right now. If you ever feel unsafe or know someone who does, please speak up or reach out for help. Silence can be deadly.
I literally brought a knife to a gunfight. I couldn't do anything. He could have took me with her. So as much as I wanted to save my mama, I'm happy I'm still here with all my sisters. It could have been worse. So I'm just.
The investigation is still active, but what's clear is that Sabrina's death has shaken the entire Douglasville community. Her barbershop, which once echoed with laughter, now stands as both a memorial and a message, a reminder of how love can turn dangerous when control and anger take over. As investigators continued piecing everything together, neighbors started sharing what they had witnessed in the hours leading up to the tragedy. Some said they heard yelling. Others said they saw flashing lights before police arrived. But one thing everyone agreed on was that Sabrina had tried to get away. That's what breaks so many hearts. She was running for her life, and it still wasn't enough. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation worked tirelessly to reconstruct the timeline. Forensic experts examined a gun, collected shell casings, and took blood samples to confirm the shooting sequence. They also retrieved surveillance footage from nearby homes to understand exactly how fast the confrontation unfolded. Every step was crucial because the scene involved both a domestic homicide and an officer-involved shooting. They had to determine whether the police responded appropriately, and at the same time, prepare a case against Volanta for the murder of his wife. When Volanta Lejuan Walker recovered from his injuries, he was officially taken into custody. Reports said he would be facing charges related to the killing of Sabrina, though the specific charges will be decided once the GBI completed its findings and forwarded everything to the Douglas County District Attorney's office. The community waited anxiously, hoping that justice for Sabrina would come swiftly and clearly. People who had known Volanta started speaking out, describing him as quiet and sometimes distant. To some, he seemed reserved but not aggressive. Others, though, mentioned he could be short-tempered and controlling. There were whispers that this wasn't the first time things had gotten physical between him and Sabrina, but there weren't any official reports to prove it. Still, the rumors painted a picture of a man who struggled with anger, a ticking time bomb that finally exploded that night. What stands out most in this case is how fast everything spiraled. Just hours before her death, Sabrina had been excited about her business reopening. Friends said she was texting clients and making plans for her birthday celebration. It's chilling to think how life can shift in a single moment, from laughter to loss, from hope to heartbreak. After the shooting, the community came together to honor her. A candlelight vigil was held outside her barbershop. Family, friends, clients, and even strangers showed up, holding candles and speaking about her kindness. They described her as a motherly figure, always ready to give advice, always lifting others. One of her daughters said, "She had such a big heart. She helped everyone, even when she didn't have much to give." At that vigil, the message was clear: they wanted justice, not just for Sabrina, but for every woman who has suffered in silence. They wanted this tragedy to be more than just another headline. They wanted it to inspire change, to remind others that domestic violence doesn't always start with bruises. Sometimes it starts with control, with fear, with isolation. You can almost feel the pain in their voices when they talk about her. This wasn't just a murder. It was a loss of someone who truly made an impact on everyone she met. It makes you wonder how many other stories like this are unfolding behind closed doors right now, without anyone noticing until it's too late. As weeks passed, the Douglasville community kept asking the same question: how did things reach this point? Investigators from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation remained tight-lipped, but slowly, pieces of the story started to emerge. They confirmed that the shooting stemmed from a domestic dispute that escalated rapidly. Sabrina tried to flee the home, and Volanta followed her outside with a firearm. What happened next unfolded within seconds, and by the time police arrived, the damage had already been done. Many in the community were heartbroken, but they were also angry. Angry because this wasn't just another case of violence. It was a woman many of them knew personally. Sabrina wasn't a stranger to them. She was part of their lives. Some had sat in her barber chair, shared stories with her, even confided in her about their own struggles. That's what makes it so painful. When someone who always listened, who always tried to uplift others, ends up silenced in such a violent way. Her daughters became her voice, speaking at community meetings and interviews. They call for justice, but they also call for awareness. One of them said something that struck people deeply. "My mom was planning her future, not her funeral." That one line echoed across social media, turning into a statement of strength and sadness all at once. As for Volanta, after being released from the hospital, he was taken to the Douglas County Jail. His mugshot spread across local news outlets, and the public's reaction was mixed. Some people couldn't believe he had done it, while others said they weren't surprised at all. A few neighbors mentioned that the couple's arguments had become more frequent in the last few months. Some even said they had heard shouting late at night before. It makes you wonder how many times people hear something and just assume it's a normal argument, until it's not. Behind all the investigations and reports, there's something human about this story, something that touches every one of us. Relationships, love, trust, they can all shift when control and jealousy start creeping in. Sometimes people ignore the red flags because they love too deeply or because they believe the other person can change. And that's what seems to have happened to Sabrina. She believed in love and forgiveness, in second chances. But sadly, those second chances turned into her final moments. Police officers who responded to the scene later described it as one of the hardest calls they'd ever taken. Some of them knew Sabrina personally through her shop. Imagine being the one to respond to a scene like that. Seeing someone you know lying there and having to make split-second decisions to prevent further bloodshed. It's the kind of thing that stays with people forever. The GBI continued to analyze all evidence, ballistics, witness statements, and body cam footage from the responding officers. They would later hand everything over to the district attorney's office for review. It's likely that Volanta would face charges of murder, aggravated assault, and possibly additional counts related to pointing a weapon at law enforcement. But beyond the legal side, people were focused on something bigger, how to prevent tragedies like this in the first place. Even weeks later, people were still leaving flowers, notes, and photos outside her shop. It wasn't just a business anymore. It had become a symbol of her life, of her dreams and the love she left behind. Her daughters have vowed to keep it running, to continue her legacy, and to make sure people remember her not as a victim, but as the strong woman she truly was. Almost a month after Sabrina Walker's death, the pain still lingers in Douglasville. Her family continues to live with a void that can never be filled, and every milestone, every birthday, every holiday, serves as a reminder of what was taken from them. Her daughters keep her memory alive by running the barbershop she built from scratch. They've turned it into more than just a business. It's now a safe space for conversations about domestic violence and community healing. When you walk in, her picture still hangs on the wall, smiling, a reminder of strength, love, and legacy. The investigation has moved forward, with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation submitting its findings to the district attorney's office. Prosecutors are reviewing the evidence, from 911 recordings to witness statements and the officer's body cam footage, to ensure justice is served. It's not a fast process, and that can be frustrating for the family. But they remain vocal, determined to make sure Sabrina's story isn't forgotten in a pile of legal paperwork. What really resonates about this case is how real it feels. We often hear about domestic violence cases and think, that could never happen here, or not to someone like her. But the truth is, it can happen anywhere to anyone. Sometimes it starts with controlling words, constant checking in, or small threats that get brushed off. Other times, it builds quietly, hidden behind fake smiles and carefully chosen words. By the time the violence becomes visible, it's often too late. Many who knew Sabrina still ask why. Why didn't someone step in sooner? Why didn't she leave for good? Those questions are hard and maybe unfair because people in abusive relationships are often trapped emotionally, financially, and mentally. They fear judgment or retaliation. That's why telling these stories matters. It opens eyes. It reminds us to look closer, to listen, and to believe people when they say something feels wrong. Volanta's actions didn't just end Sabrina's life. They shattered a family and shook a community. People still remember the sound of sirens at night, the flashing lights, the disbelief. Some neighbors say they still can't walk past the house without feeling uneasy. Others say it's changed how they see relationships. That love should never come with fear. The call for justice continues, not just in court, but in the hearts of those who loved her. Sabrina's family is pushing for stronger awareness around domestic violence, urging people to speak out when they see signs of abuse. They want her name to mean something beyond tragedy, to become a symbol of courage for others trying to escape similar situations. And maybe that's the real message here. That silence can be deadly, but speaking up can save lives. Every time her story is told, it becomes a voice for those who can't speak anymore. So we think, could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had intervened earlier? Do you think justice will truly bring closure to her family? And how many more stories like Sabrina's are still unfolding behind closed doors right now? Let's talk about it in the comments below. And if you found this story powerful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay connected with Shadow Crime. Together, by sharing these stories, we can make sure that victims like Sabrina Walker are never forgotten, and that their stories spark the change this world desperately needs